Hello everyone. All right. I'm trying out this low latency on the YouTube, so let's see how that works out. That will be interesting. Let's see if it's still a little bit slow, right? Let's see. Well, it's not really real time, but definitely better than the last one. Let's see the stream settings over here. Oh, I guess there's no way to go back to normal latency. We'll be starting in a few minutes, everyone. If you do have any questions, you can type it out on the YouTube chat. Let's see over here if I can do start a timer for 4 minutes. There we go. Yeah, with the low latency is actually pretty, the interaction will be mostly like live with maybe 1 or 2 second delay. So that's much better. Normal latency, the interaction was like very late, like probably like 15-20 second delay. So we'll be back. Okay. People who are joining, you can hear me okay? Everything. You can introduce yourself if you want in YouTube chat. That will be great. And where did you hear about this live stream? I try to do these live stream every couple of weeks. I try to do it every week, but every couple of weeks at least. Right, let me actually post it over here. Okay. Oh, doesn't look like YouTube is. All right, we got one couple of more minutes. All right, everyone, couple of more minutes. We're going to get started. If you're just joining in, go ahead and introduce yourself in the YouTube chat. And that is where you can actually post your questions also. So if you do have any question during the live stream, you can post those questions. This will be kind of like a very basic live stream in which I'll show you at least my way of consuming API, and there are so many different ways that you can use it or you can implement it, but I'll be just showing you most commonly ways that I use it. All right. All right, still waiting for a little bit more. Hello, Maho, how are you doing? Thank you for joining. All right. I think we can cancel this timer. All right, everyone. So welcome to consuming JSON API in SwiftUI app. We only have 1 hour, so we're going to cover kind of like the basics of how to consume JSON API, and I'm going to show you maybe the most common technique that I use. All right. Okay. A little bit of introduction about myself. Um, my name is Mohammad Azam, and I am a coding bootcamp instructor. I teach web development, I teach AI, machine learning in Python, scikit-learn, pandas, all of those different things. And I also do a lot of iOS development, as you already know. I have my own website, which is azamsharp.com. And apart from this website, I also have my own courses now, which you probably have already seen, azamsharp.school. This is where I host my courses. I also do one-on-one consulting or coaching. Actually, I just finished one-on-one coaching a couple of days ago with a person, and another one is scheduled for next week. Apart from that, I also do workshops, courses. So if you go to azamsharp.school, you can actually check out all of these different things. You can see all of these different courses that are there. You can see a huge list of courses. All right. And workshops are live. So if I go to workshop, the one that is scheduled right now is going to be on August 22nd, and it's going to be on server-side Swift, Vapor. So you're going to learn about routing, MVC pattern, design, database integration, consuming API. And one thing that I recently added is if you sign up for the annual membership, then all the workshops that happen every year, and there are around like four to six or eight, 4 to 8 workshops or 4 to 6 workshops that happens I host it every year on different topics, obviously, like unit testing. I did it on Vapor, obviously, right? Machine learning, that's another topic I did. So if you sign up for the whole year annual plan, you get all for free. So that's a really good deal that I've just added. All right. So check out azamsharp.school, check out the workshops, one-on-one coaching, courses, whatever you want. Let's go ahead and talk about how do we consume API when we are writing our SwiftUI application. And in order to consume the API, the first thing we need is, well, what API would we like to consume, right? I mean, that's the first thing. And one of the really good API that I found, and I am also creating a lot of videos on integrating this API into my own app, which I have created videos hosted on Azam Sharp School, is the Platzi Fake Store API. Now, this is a really nicely done API. If you go to the link that I provided in the YouTube chat, you can go to View Documents and Documentation, and look at that. They have a really good documentation of how to get the products, how to get the categories, how to get the locations, all of these different things. So if I look at the categories, and let me zoom in a little bit. There we go. They have a really nice documentation over there. I mean, it's all fake, by the way. I mean, the API is fake, hence the name Fake Store API. And what it allows you to do is just to play around with displaying the categories, displaying the products of the category, displaying the user logging in. So they also have authentication stuff. See that? You can actually authenticate, log in, you can register. Authentication is done by JWT. They also provide you with the access token, the refresh token. So all of these things, it's really nice documentation that they have provided. All right. And the API also is really nice. Okay. So what do we want to do today? We're not really going to do authentication because that's going to take a while. We want to just try to see that if we can consume an API and if we can display the categories, and if we have time, we can probably display the products of each category. Because that's usually the case. You display the categories, you click on it, and then you display the products of that categories. All right. Now, I know that a lot of people are joining in right now. If you are joining in, if you have any question, you can use the YouTube chat, but go ahead and also introduce yourself and tell me, where did you hear about this live stream? All right. And your question should be like, it's a low latency, so I should be able to see any, if you have any question, pretty much live, all right? Maybe a 1 or 2 second delay, but it will be live. Okay. So the first thing what I want to do is I want to see how I can display categories, this one. Once we can display the categories, then we can click on a category, select a category, and it will display the products. I've already created a SwiftUI application, as you can see over here, and there's nothing in the app. It's completely, as you can see, it's completely blank, or just a basic template. I haven't really written any code. It's like a hello world app. So if I want to consume categories, the first thing I would need is some sort of a model to represent this category, right? Some sort of a model to represent this category. Now, for creating these kind of things where I have to create a model, I usually use ChatGPT. Create a model called category for this. See, this is kind of like a grunt work, meaning I don't really want to type the code. There we go, it's done. I can just copy this category and I can just do that. Now, obviously, if you're using GitHub, what is that called? GitHub Copilot, Claude, Cursor, whatever you're using, you can use any of that stuff. That's up to you. I like to use ChatGPT. I have a plus plan with them, so that's fine. All right. But if you want to use something else, you can definitely use something else. Let's go and create a new folder. I can create this folder. I can probably call it like DTOs, because that's what we're doing. We're creating DTOs. And I can also add a single file called dtos.swift. And I can add my first DTO in there, which is a category DTO. All right, so it's already done. I mean, we have the category, we have the identifiable, codable. I don't think we need hashable, so let's remove that part for now. Maybe we do in the future, we don't know, but right now we don't really need it to be hashable or anything like that. Also, I don't really care that much about the slug part, right? This slug, so I can remove that. And the image, we can use the actual URL. So let's replace it with a URL. So we edited some portions of the automatically generated code, and this is now our category, okay? The next thing we want to do is we want to perform a network request. So I'm going to create a different folder. I will call it networking. And over here, I can create a client, HTTP client. So I'll just call it HTTP client. Now keep in mind, and this is very important, keep in mind that when you're creating some sort of a HTTP client like I'm doing, it's a good idea to make it more generic, meaning you can make requests using a single function in HTTP client, and you don't have to create separate functions. Now that does require a lot of code, and we don't have time for writing a bunch of code. So what I'll do is I will create it in a way that we will have to create separate functions for everything. This is not what I would do in a real project. I would actually write it out over here. Make sure that HTTP client allows generic behavior so you don't create separate functions for each call, all right? And I've explained that in my courses and all that how you can make a really nice generic HTTP client, all right? So load categories, obviously it's going to load the categories. Maybe we can call it fetch categories if you want to call it. I mean, that's fine too. Fetch categories, get categories, load categories, fetch is fine. Over here, we are going to make a request to the URL. So let's get the URL, this one. All right. Now, I can also, if I want to organize it a little bit better, I can create a file called constants. Let's go ahead and create a file called constants. Constants. Again, it's completely up to you what you want to call it. Constants. Okay. And over here, I can create kind of like an inner dictionary, inner struct, and I can probably call this static let, what are we calling? Categories, right? So categories, and I can say URL like this. So this will just allow me to say constants.url.categories, all right, and constants.messages.something else, all right. If you want to use an enum, you can use an enum. If you want to use whatever, you can use whatever technique you want. That's the quickest one I can think of right now. So we can use this technique. Now I can go back to my HTTP client and try to perform the request, right? I'm going to say URL session dot shared dot, and then we will have from the URL. So in this case, I can simply say constants dot URL dot categories. See that? So it becomes a little bit easier if you are targeting that part. We are going to get something over here. Oops, what's going on? There we go. We're going to get the data and we're going to get the response. Response, I'm not really going to do much with it, so I'm just going to ignore it. Now again, don't ignore response. Check for errors and error or status codes. Status code. This function is just to save time. All right. All right. Now we get the data and we can decode the data. So JSON decoder dot decode, the type that we're trying to decode will be an array of categories, so array of categories, and that will be decoded by the data. And we can do something like this. Let's see what's going on over here. Method return, okay, so we need to return it. So that should probably give us all the categories. We can fetch all the categories, right? Now this is obviously a very, like 2 lines of code. If you were implementing a generic HTTP client, which will have a single function like maybe fetch or load, whatever you want to call it, then you will have to take into account different types that are codable. You have to cache different status code and all of that stuff. So that can become really, really long, whether it is get, post, put, patch, delete. All of that will be handled in a more of a generic HTTP client, which this is not, as I've written over here. It's not a generic HTTP client. It is using different functions to perform different requests. All right. Anyone has any questions right now? All right. Okay, let me see over here. We are getting any. Okay. So we have the fetch categories. Now, there are many different ways of calling fetch categories. Most of the time that I do, is it okay? Is it working? Can anyone type something in the chat, just letting me know if you can see the stream correctly, or is it glitchy? Because I know that I'm running on low latency. I don't have any internet problems or anything, but hopefully it's running out fine. All right, this is the first time I'm running on low latency, so that's why I'm asking. So our interaction hopefully will be live. So Manish Singh is saying, how do you make it testable? Well, I guess what are we trying to test? I guess you're trying to test that you are fetching the categories. If that's what you're trying to test, and if you're trying to test the integration between the HTTP client and the Platzi server, then you will call the fetch categories and just see if it returns something or not. That's how you will test. If you're talking about, if you want to run a UI test and you don't want to call the actual HTTP client fetch categories, then you will have to create a HTTP client protocol, which your mock HTTP client can use to perform the calls. But if you're trying to test the actual, the real deal end-to-end testing, then obviously you will have to use the actual function over here. All right. So it depends what you're trying to test over here. It will have different cases. But yeah, even if you're using it in SwiftUI previews and you don't want to perform the request again and again because there might be some limit to the request, then you can create a HTTP client protocol and you can use that. All right. So I'll probably write it over here, HTTP client protocol for mocking the result or response, whatever you want to call it. So that is how you will test it out. So now the question becomes, okay, what do we do with this? How do we use it? Can we directly access it in the view? You can. There are certain type of apps where there is no business logic. All right. All the business logic is on the server. And when you have those kind of apps, you can actually utilize or use HTTP client right in the view. And that's perfectly fine. What I usually do is I like to add a little bit of a layer because I want to share the data, I want to inject the environment object and all that stuff. So what I usually do is I end up creating a new folder and I will call this, you can call this anything you want. I'm just going to add a observable object and I'll call it Platzi store. Okay. So let's go ahead and import observation. We will be using that and we will say Platzi store. Why is it called Platzi store? Well, because that's the only observable object I'm currently deciding to make because the app is not that big, and one Platzi store observable object, it can handle everything. It can handle the entire state of the application if it wants to. See that? Platzi store. Nice. Now, Platzi store cannot really work on its own. It needs a dependency of HTTP client or use HTTP client protocol if you are mocking protocol for mocking. So now I'm going to go ahead and create it. So in order to create Platzi store, which is an observable object, you need to pass in a dependency. All right. The other thing we need to do is we can go ahead and create a function called load categories, which is async throws. And what load categories is actually going to do is going to use HTTP client.fetch categories. It's going to get the categories and it's going to simply assign the categories to, to the categories property that I'm just going to create now, categories. Now this is kind of interesting because sometimes the load categories over here can actually also return the categories like this to the view, because I will be using Platzi store in the view. So you can do that too. It really depends. Sometimes I would assign it like I'm assigning it right over here, so that the Platzi store can maintain the categories and maybe I need to access the category somewhere else. So that case, I will just assign it. So it really depends on the situations. All right. Okay, so we got the Platzi store. We have Richard Ozur sending love from Nigeria. Hey Richard, thank you for joining. Okay, so we got the load categories. Everyone following, right? Nice and simple. We are not really doing anything complicated right now. All right. Load categories is simply using fetch categories from HTTP client, getting the data, assigning it to categories. Categories is a published property. Obviously, we're using observable, so we don't have to say published, but we know that when you set the categories, then it will trigger a subscription, a publisher, it will publish an event, and that is something we can try to access in our view. So now comes to the part of the view. Let's go to the view. Well, we don't really have we have a view. I guess we can use this one, content view. All right. So now the content view is the view that is supposed to display the categories. I want to just say display all categories. The first thing the content view needs is access to Platzi store. So I'm just going to inject the Platzi store over here as an environment. See that? Now, usually you don't really inject this for every single view, because if I'm running the application, remember the app file, this is where I can just inject it right there, and then it will be available to all the children of content view. So it will be available to everyone, whoever wants to use it, whoever wants to use the Platzi store. But for the preview, I do need to inject it over here, or else it's going to complain. Now I've injected it, I can access it. I can say environment, Platzi store, private var store. Okay, Platzi store.self, I guess. We're using the observable, so we have to say Platzi store.self. All right. Everything looks good right now. Everyone following? See, I'm making it really simple, so you don't have to create like separate observable objects, because it's a small app. It's not a big app. If you were working on a very large application, then I would suggest, then I have an article that you can definitely check out. I think it's somewhere over here. Building large-scale apps. This is a pretty huge article. It's considered the Bible of SwiftUI architecture, so definitely read that. All right. And I think I've added a lot of stuff, but it's always, I'm trying to up to date. All right. So there we go. So we are injecting the environment, and this is just for the preview, by the way, right? When we're injecting the environment right here, this is just for the preview. It has nothing to do with the actual app when you're running the app. So this is just for the preview, so that we can access it right there. And now we can try to display our categories. We'll display it in a list. So we'll say store.categories, category. I'm just going to try to display the name of the category. If I can display the name, then I can display other things. Right now, it's displaying nothing. Can anyone tell me why it's not displaying anything right now? What's going on? I mean, I think I'm doing it right, but what is going on? Why is it not displaying the category name? I think we have a couple of categories it should display. No, nobody? Well, that's because we never called fetch categories. See that? Store dot, there we go, and not on appear. So don't call it on appear, call it in the task, because it's an async call. There we go. And you can create a separate function if you want to. If you want to put this code inside a separate function, like you can call that function load categories, a separate function, that's fine. But for the minimum amount of code, this is fine. See that? Now we got all the categories displayed, right? If you want to display the image, you can do kind of like the same thing. So I'm going to go ahead and say add stack. Obviously, for image, you can use many different third-party things also. What is that? Kingfisher, Nuke, I think you can use all of those different things that can cache the image. We're going to get the image, img image.resizable.frame set the frame to whatever you want. I can say maybe 75, height can be 75, play around with that. Progress view, loading. Probably you don't really want it to say loading, but you know, we got the images also, right? So pretty cool that only with not that much, not that many lines of code, we were able to display our categories. Now, if you want to display something else over here, like if the categories are still loading, and it's going to take some time, then you can adjust those things over here, right over here. All right. So there are many different ways of adjusting those things. Um, like I think I can create. Sometime what I do is I create like this function called load categories. It's just a helper function, nothing else. Private load categories, yeah. And I will put this code inside load categories, and let's call load categories over here. Okay, and inside the load categories, I can, I can have like a flag over here. Is loading Boolean equals to false, and when you go over here, I can just set its loading to be true. But when you leave this function, then make sure you can use the differ to always set it to false. All right, so now you can actually go over here and do something. There are so many different ways to do these kind of things. Like, what should we do? Like, probably we should check something over here, right? If loading, no, if is loading, or we can say if store.categories is empty, or is loading is true, then we can display something over here like progress view or something. It's completely up to you how you want to do it. Sometimes you can just do this. If it's loading, then show progress view, loading, else go ahead and do all of this stuff. So it's kind of, and another thing to make sure is try to use the progress view in, what is that called, the overlay, because it doesn't really work correctly if you use it like this. You will see some weird issues going on. Am I using like multiple times? Okay, I'm using multiple times over here. And we can even make this one go with the progress view. Okay. All right, so what's going on now? If it's loading, well, it's not even loading, I guess. So we will probably have to make this shift somewhere else. Probably like use a Z stack. Some people like to use group. That's fine too. Nothing wrong with group. And we can use the task modifier, await, load categories. Okay, there we go. All right. So anyway, I mean, but try to see if you can put the progress view in, what is that called? The overlay. Because I've seen some issues with the progress view when it is not in the overlay. So sometimes you will feel you will get those issues. I think probably right now it's not really, it's okay. It's not really giving those issues. But sometimes it can have like weird behavior. All right, depending on the condition. All right. All right, so there you go. We were able to display list of all the categories. Any questions regarding anything we are discussing? All right. All right, don't go anywhere. I'll be right back in 2 seconds, all right? All right, everyone, I'm back. Oops, what's going on over here? All right. Manish is saying, can you talk a little bit about image caching, like how should be the architecture? Well, if you want image caching, you can definitely use Kingfisher. You can also use Nuke if you want to build your own image caching. Um, I don't think I have a, it's on my, it's a paid one, but it's over here. If you want to build your own image caching, let me see over here. One of the videos I have, it covers, I believe, image caching somewhere. Managing state, implementing caching. Yeah, there we go. See that? So that's the one that's actually covering image caching. This is not, this is only for members, so I'll add a link, but this is only for members. But you can also use, if you don't want to implement your own, you can use Kingfisher for image caching, or you can use Nuke, and those are also very good. All right. All right, everyone. So we got our page for categories. It would be nice if we can actually go from categories page to the products page. So displaying the products based on the selected category. The first thing I want to do is look at this code over here. All of this code, we can go ahead and make it in a way that this is like a cell view. All right. Somebody's asking how to create middleware on it, like suppose in headers like token for protected or public routes or checking internet connection, stuff like that. Uh, yeah, I mean, you can make all of those different things. You will put your tokens in the keychain. If you want your routes to be protected, the resources to be protected, then that was done obviously on the server side. And on the client side, if you want your tabs to be protected, then that is done on the client side. And I have a lot of videos on that also. All right. All right. And then you will also implement the generic HTTP client. You're not gonna implement it on like this, because you need to set headers for probably most of the requests that are protected, and you're going to get those values from the keychain. And that is something that I've discussed over here, actually. Let me see. So all of this Platzi app that we're building, that is right here. You can see that I'm still working on this Platzi store integration. So there's a huge section on this, refreshing tokens, generic client. So this is all where I'm covering, and I obviously am not done yet. I have to do categories and so much more. So it's coming out to be really good project. Another thing we should do is we should move this H stack into its own, right? So I'll say struct category cell view, which is a view. Always when you're doing SwiftUI, try to create these small reusable controls, because that's how SwiftUI will keep track of the dependencies. All right, that's a very important thing that you should be concerned about. And you can see now in the category cell view that I just created, I can pass in the category. The result is absolutely same because we didn't really do much. We just moved the code from over here from our content view to the category cell view. All right. Let's see what's going on. Why is it stuck in loading? It shouldn't be stuck anywhere. Let's see what's going on over here. That's weird. I didn't really change any code. Oh, there we go. I think it was we just hitting the server so many times that they're slowing it down. All right. So the next thing that we want to do is we want to add a navigation stack, so we can actually go from the category screen, this screen, to the other screen. For the previews, if you like previews, you can actually add a navigation stack to the previews also. This will give you ability to add the title and also navigation, obviously. So let me see if I can add a title somewhere. Probably over here. Navigation title. categories. There we go. And now we can use the navigation link. Okay, so I can use a navigation link right there, navigation link with a destination and a view. Destination right now it will be text. I'll just call it product list screen because I don't really have a product screen. And for the cell view, I'm going to just do it like this. I know that you can also use the navigation destination for these things, and both are fine. Keep in mind that whenever you use a navigation link with this, like the destination and the label, it is going to invoke this category cell view for every single cell. It's going to invoke it, mean it's going to call the initializer for category cell view. It's not really going to do the rendering. Oh, sorry, not this one, this one. The category cell view is obviously invoked, that's why we see all the stuff. But it is going to call the initializer of the text view, all right, but not going to render it. Now we can go to body, and you can see it actually takes us to different pages. See that a little bit of a hiccup going on, see? I think that is probably caused by, not sure, right? It's going a little bit of a hiccup over here. Probably if we go and add like a navigation title, maybe that will make it a little bit better. But I can say category.name. Let's see. Well, I can still see a little bit of a hiccup going on. Probably it might be because of the loading thing. That is possible. So that's why I try to use the overlay in those cases. Maybe overlay will fix those things. All right. But you can actually even remove this and see if it fixes the problem. Sometimes that's the easiest solution is to just remove the loading part just to check it out and then see if it works. All right. Okay, so we don't really have any product list screen. That is something that we can actually build. Let me go ahead and add a new file over here. Product list screen. Now, one thing to keep in mind over here is that I have this view. Let's change this view name to something, right? Because content view sounds really weird. So let's change it to category list screen. All right, now it makes a little bit more sense, category list screen. One thing you can see for this particular code is that we only made one observable object, Platzi store, and that can manage everything. So for small or even to medium-sized apps, you can actually use just one observable object depending on what you're trying to do, but one observable object. Now, obviously, if I'm trying to get like a location of the person and do something, I will probably add another source of truth and another observable object, but I'm not going to add observable object just because I've added multiple screens. See that? So that's a very big difference that you will see when you need to, limit the complexity. We don't really need to add unnecessary complexity for these things. Like I don't need a category list store and a product list store. I don't need that, right? Okay, so let's go to the product list screen and probably we can pass in a category over here, right? Category, there we go. And now for the preview, we also have to pass in something so that it works. So I can pass in one over here. Name can be whatever. And for image URL, I think we should get the image URL from somewhere like this one. URL, this is just for the preview. So if it doesn't work, we can always change it. There we go. Okay. So now we have the product list screen where you can pass in a selected category. If I go to my category list screen, I can change this one and I can say product list screen and I can pass in the category. Nice and simple. Also, navigation title, I can probably remove it from here and just put it in the product list screen. There we go. Okay. And then if I want to see the navigation title in the preview, I'll just wrap it up like this. There we go. We got the navigation title, shirts. Okay. Now, how do we get the products? Like, is there a way from this API that if we have a category ID, we can use the category ID to get all the products? Well, here it is. Get all products by category. And this is the URL. See that? So I can copy this URL. All I need is to pass in a category ID. If I go back to my functions over here, I can create a function. I can call it static function products by category. Probably we can just pass in the category ID, and we can return a URL. I mean, that will be like kind of like the simplest thing I can think of. And then instead of the ID over here, we're just gonna inject the ID, category ID. There we go. Okay, yeah, this should return a URL also. So there we go. That's the simplest way I can think of that we can actually get the URL custom tailored to the category ID that we're passing so that we can get the products. All right. So now what we can do is we can go to our Plotly store, but we also have to go over here and we will have to do something like fetch products by category. We're going to pass in probably the ID, category ID. All right. And this will be integer. What is it going to return? It's going to return product, which we don't have. So we also need to create the products. Apart from that, most of the code will be kind of same old. Products by category ID, we're going to pass in the category ID over here. And then we're going to decode it to product. All right. What about the product? We don't have the product. Well, we can always go over here, copy this part. This is a product, right? This is a product right there. Ask ChatGPT, create product model based on, well, maybe we should, there we go. There we go. So these kind of things you can actually ask ChatGPT to perform these things because this is kind of like a grunt work that nobody wants to do. And we don't really need all of this stuff. You can just grab what you want. So if I go to my DTO now, I can add that. Slug, I don't care about the slug, remove that. The description is fine. I don't think I need a category over here. I don't think I need it to be hashable for now. That sounds about right. All right, so we can now use the product. Let's go to the HTTP client. I'm not sure why it's complaining. Probably it has to be async. Throws. And apart from that, everything should be okay, right? We'll go to the Plotly store. Now this is kind of like an interesting thing because the products that you're getting, you're fetching are based on the category. So if I go ahead and create a products array over here, it would become a little bit more confusing because if I'm looking at it, I'm thinking that, oh, these are all the products for all the categories. But for us, this is not all the products for all the categories. These are only the product for the selected category. All right. So you can create something called like, you can change the name of this to something like say products by category. If that's what you want, you can do that. What I would do is I would say fetch products by category, and I think somebody is going to pass in the category ID, which is integer, async throws. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to return the products to to the caller. Whoever is calling, I'll just return the products. Fetch products by category ID, you do that, try, await, nice one-liner. There we go, done. All right, now this function returns the product to who? To whoever is calling. Who is calling? The view is calling. So it will just return the products to the view. View can do whatever it wants. So now if I go to my product list screen, see that we have the category ID and everything. Over here, I can do kind of like the same thing. I can create a state variable called products. And this is usually a good solution for pages, for views where the products is only displayed on a single view and you're not really moving it around too much. Even if you're moving it around too much, meaning passing it, you can pass it to the child views and that should be okay. And over here, I'm just going to go through the products. We will get access to a product and we can simply display, whoa, what's happened over there? We can display the product.title. All right. Obviously, we still have to make the call. So task modifier, not that, task modifier over here. We don't have access to the store, so let's go ahead and inject the store also, which will be our Platzi store, HTTP client. Now, this is the HTTP client that we are using, which is the real deal. Like it's going to go and make the call to the server. If you don't want to do that, then you can always create your own, like a mock HTTP client. And if you follow me on Twitter, I just posted some of my work as how you can do that. All right. What else is left? So we need to access environment. I usually put environment kind of like a little bit before everything. So I'll put it over here, environment, and Platzi store.self store. See, so product list screen, category list screen, all of them can access the store. Easy. You don't have to pass it as a dependency or anything. That some people like to do that when they're creating these different view models. They create like 10,000 view model. Every single screen will have a view model, and that becomes unmanageable, right? So you don't have to do all of that stuff. And we're going to do try await. We're going to get the products, and you can move it into a separate function called load products or whatever, but I'm just going to type out the code over here. All right. Okay, what's going on? It's not returning anything. Let's see the error. Probably I'm doing something wrong. Okay, nothing going on over here. Store products, we got the products. It should be displaying it. What am I missing? Am I missing something over here? Okay, let's start with the category list screen. If I go to electronics, oh, it is displaying. I don't know what's going on over there, but yeah, see that? All the products are displaying. I don't know about that hiccup that is going on. Let's remove this loading part. Maybe it is related to this loading thing. All right, sometime it is, because you should probably be using that progress view inside a, what is that called? Overlay. Yeah, see that? It was because of that. Now it's nice and smooth. So if you do want to add that progress view, add it in the overlay, because it glitches. Whenever there's a little bit of time between the is loading is set from false to true and then false, and that glitches. That allows you to glitch. And there we go. We have actually created a nice looking app that displays the categories from the server, and then it fetches the corresponding products from the server, and then it displays it. All right. So this is a kind of like the architecture that I use when I am developing a client-server apps. Depending on the complexity, I can start with one observable object, which in this case we have Platzi store, but we can have, we can have more. All right. All right. Any questions? So hopefully everyone has enjoyed it. Let's see over here. Any questions? So that's it. Definitely check out Platzi Store API and try to make things simple. I know that a lot of people, uh, you know, they try to make things complicated because they want to add like 30 different view models and all that stuff. So just try to keep things really simple. And you'll see that if you keep things simple, if you try to do the things that um, SwiftUI is telling you to do, because SwiftUI works really nice if you just try to use it in a certain way, then your app will be much faster. All right, it will be much better. All right. All right, then that is pretty much it, everyone. Thank you so much for attending. And once again, check out Azam Sharp School. I have a lot of courses over there. I keep on adding a lot of different videos in Azam Sharp Pro member content. But obviously, when you sign up, you get all of this stuff, all of it. All right. Workshops are available. One-to-one coaching is very popular. I'm already booked for next week for one-on-one coaching. So for a couple of sessions. But try to see if you like it. Let me know. Thank you so much, everyone, for attending. And I'll be back next week then. All right. Thank you.